move or cancel this afternoon off campus, but she will return in about an hour. So we'll see if I can manage the microphone this afternoon. I'm going to be rude and read part of Dr. Tomlin's bio because I didn't have an opportunity to spend much time committing it to memory. He grew up in Texas, received a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science degree from Stephen F. Austin State University in Texas. And after working for the BLM in Oregon as a forester, he began teaching forestry and natural resources at the college level. And while teaching at College of the Redwoods in Eureka, California, he also began working on a doctorate and received that degree from the University of Laverne in California. Following that, he began as a division dean at Shasta College in Redding, California. Moved on to instructional dean at Central Oregon Community College in Bend, and then was the vice president of instruction at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, Oregon. I bet I pronounced that town wrong.
No, that's right.
And more recently has been the president of and is the president of Kennebog Valley Community College in Danielson, Connecticut. And so, without having butchered that too badly, I will introduce you to Dr. Russ Tomlin.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is afternoon, right? It's been a fun day. Well, let me just give you a little bit of my background other than what Stan mentioned, and then I'll certainly open it up to questions and see if you can grill me a little bit. So it's really good to be here in Wyoming. I have traveled through the state many times, but it's kind of like, the I-80, just zoom on through, because we've lived on both coasts and moved back and forth a couple of times. So pretty much every time we'd come right through Cheyenne, but never really spent any time in this part of the country. So it certainly is very different from Connecticut. If you ever been to New England, all the trees, the forests, it's all dense. Everything's just kind of connected together, and you almost forget about how wide open it is out here. And so it's very nice. So I've been in community colleges for just over 30 years. Really found that I love the mission of a community college and what it was all about. I love teaching, and at some point had thought I wanted to teach at a university level. And so I went back to the University of Idaho to work on a doctorate so I could teach at the university, and really realized that just really wasn't where my heart was. Number one, to do research most of the time and not deal with the kinds of students that we have at a community college. So I went to Boston after that to get some practical experience, and I actually managed some state parks in Boston, or outside of Boston. And then found that, got that itch out of me, and then I wanted to go back to teaching. So I've taught ever since then, until I got my doctorate in California and decided to go over to the dark side, as we say, and become an administrator. So I've been doing that for the last 12 years. And so I love community colleges. I love what they stand for. Why do I want this job particularly? I think out of all the jobs I've had, maybe not including teaching, because I just love teaching, but as an administrator, the job I really enjoyed the most was vice president of instruction. I did that in Oregon, and I love working with faculty. I love working on curriculum and academic issues. And I found in Connecticut I wasn't able to do that for the most part. I had to do other things. And so I think where my heart lies, where my passion and my talents lie, is really at the vice president level, focusing on academics. Plus our grandkids are all in Moscow and in Idaho, not Russia. That's Moscow. And if you say Moscow, if you ever go to Moscow, Idaho, and say Moscow, they will certainly know you're not a native. So that's where my grandkids are. We love the West. We want to get back out closer to the grandkids. And what I found in looking at Laramie County, or as the fellow at the hotel said, LCCC, is that it? So that's what I found in researching the college was that you guys are all doing some amazing things. There's some great innovation, some creative things going on here. I know you've had your challenges, but it seems like you're going in a good direction. I would like, to be part of an organization that is excited about what they're doing. I've never been to a community college that didn't feel passionate about students. So that's pretty universal. But, to be passionate about what you're doing and how you're impacting students and what you're contributing to the college, I think is important. And I want to be part of an organization that has that excitement and enthusiasm and wants to work together to accomplish, more and more and do even better. Because I think we can always do better than what we're doing. And we just have to keep working at it. So that's why I'm here standing before you right as we speak. So with that, I'll just go ahead and open it up to questions, and feel free to ask anything you're interested in.
And I have the mic that I'll be happy to walk around to you. This is like the previous couple of days, we have to extract questions.
Hi, Doug Wilson with the Physical Therapist Assistant Program, and I hope this question is not inappropriate, but I notice, if it is, don't answer it. I was reading through your information, and you talked about that you had applied here previously, and you had withdrawn your name, and now you're back. And so I guess I'm just a little curious about
Sure.
why that. I mean, I don't need to know all the details, but I just wondered why you came back around for a second go-round.
Okay.
And maybe what didn't work the first time.
Well, everything in life is timing. So this summer was at a point where I think we'd made the decision we wanted to my wife and I, make some changes and start looking around. And about the time I got the call from the consultant saying, they want you to come to Wyoming for a final interview, as we had talked about it, and we were actually on vacation at the time, camping out, and so we had, very in-depth conversations. And I really realized that there were some things I really still felt I needed to accomplish at my college, and I just wasn't quite ready to make the announcement, that I'm looking for another job, because at that point, it had become public. And so I made that decision to back out at that point. Things have happened in Connecticut over the last 3-4 months that you wouldn't even you just wouldn't imagine. So in higher ed, it's been quite a mess. If you Google higher ed in Connecticut, you'll get some of it. So what it showed me is that I probably made a mistake. I should have come to Wyoming this summer and tried that, but I didn't, and it just seemed almost surreal that then I saw the position opened up again this fall. So I thought, well, we'll give it another shot, because I was impressed with everything I'd read and researched about the college and where you're at. So it works out. Sometimes life does that for you. So you figure either there's a reason for it or the timing is there now. So that's why I'm here.
He gave a much more thorough explanation to the cabinet at lunch, and believe me, it's one of those stories you can't believe until you hear it. Connecticut really does have major issues with higher ed.
They do.
I'm Brenda Little. I'm on the Board of Trustees with Ed.
Okay.
And I'd like to know what kind of history you have in working with a Board of Trustees, and how you envision working with the Board of Trustees here at LCCC.
Well, it is interesting that I really have not had a lot of close workings with the board. At Umpqua, as a vice president, I certainly went to every board meeting. I knew all the board members. We got along. From time to time, one would call me and need some information or whatever. But we were at a point where in that environment, we were not encouraged as vice presidents to deal directly with the board. So I just didn't get much in the way of interactions. Going to Connecticut, it's a state system. So there was a state board. So again, I was not in a position to work directly with a board. Again, I knew the board members and saw them every month at the board meetings, but again, we had a chancellor, and the chancellor is the one that worked with the board. So I guess I would say I don't have a lot of experience working closely with the board. How I would work with you all here would be exactly how the president wants me to work with you and how you all want me to work with you. I love working with groups, and we all have the same objectives, and so, you know, I would see my role with the board as education or, you know, information to share with you what's going on in academic affairs and issues we're having or whatever, but any information you need, I'm there to help you.
Nobody else is popping up. Another question then. You said the job that you really love was being the vice president of instruction, and you talked a lot about about how passionately you feel about that. But can you give me some examples of some specific things that you've experienced that you really love and light your fire about being a vice president of academic affairs?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, well, I love starting new programs. I've started numerous programs, both as a dean level and as a vice president. I love working with faculty to do program reviews and program improvement because I think that's where we can have the opportunity to make things more consistent and standardized and work well. So I love outcomes assessment. When I went to Umpqua, the college has just been put on probation for their lack of implementing outcomes assessment. And I know that's certainly not news in the community college world. In fact, the last year I was there was 9 colleges in California that were put on the step next to losing their accreditation because they just simply refused to implement outcomes assessment. So I was brought in, you know, that was my #1 task when I first came to Umpqua, to get that up and running, and we had a focused visit 1 year after I got to Umpqua, and we needed to have results. Luckily, I hired a dean that came in, had some experience in outcomes assessment. We worked and implemented a system that was online, and faculty could go on and put their outcomes in there, and it was an amazing project, and it worked well, and we got glowing reports when we had our focus visit the next year. So I love working on that stuff because I really believe in outcome-based instruction. I really believe in different kinds of delivery systems. That was part of my doctorate dissertation, was on delivery systems, self-paced models, compressed models, those kinds of things. So that really excites me to work with faculty to try and see, can we implement some of those things in your curriculum, your programs that would enhance. Of course, now we're dealing with student success, right? So trying to deal with retention and completion rates and trying to hang on to students and help keep them engaged so that they can then be successful and stay till graduation or transfer. So those are the kind of things that just really excite me. And articulation. I've done a lot of articulations with high schools and universities, dozens and dozens of those in Oregon and California. And I really enjoy working with high school people and the university people to put those articulations together because all that does is help students. Anytime you can remove obstacles and barriers and help make it easier for students to go from high school to college to university, it just is a win-win for all of us, and so I enjoy being part of that process too. You're welcome.
Hello again, Dr. Tomlin.
Hi, Lee.
The Vice President of Academic Affairs, back up a second. Unlike Connecticut, Wyoming is a community college system with a little s, 7 independent colleges coordinated by the commission.
Right.
So our Vice President of Academic Affairs represents the college on the Academic Affairs Council. Could you speak to experience you have on in bodies like that and how you balance the colleges, the independent colleges' interests with the interests of the state?
So this academic council is at the state level?
That's correct. It's all of the vice presidents of
presidents?
academic affairs from the 7 community colleges.
And is that part of the commission, or is that separate?
It's a standing council from the commission.
From the commission.
There's also a representative from the Wyoming Community College Commission on that body.
Oh, interesting. yeah. Well, in Oregon, we had a pretty similar system. We had 17 colleges. They were all independent, but we had, I'm not even sure what Cam was called. I don't think she was called a chancellor, but she was at the system level in Salem, and she, coordinated with us. She could never tell the presidents what to do, but she worked between the legislature and the colleges, and so it was a very small S as far as the system goes. And we would work with her quite a bit. Now, in Oregon, it was called the Council of Instructional Administrators, and that was all the vice presidents and some deans from all the colleges. And so we met regularly. We like to call ourselves, Council of Instructional Administrators, CIA. So, if we told you what we did, we'd have to kill you. But that was a very cohesive group. To give you an example, while I was at Umpqua, because I'd been part of that group sort of in an informal way as a dean. But when you become vice president, then you're formally a member of that group. And we had found over the years, because there was a degree in Oregon called the AAOT, Associate of Arts Oregon Transfer. So it was their transfer degree that theoretically all 7 state universities in Oregon had to accept that degree in total. And couldn't unpackage it when the students went to the university. But what we found is that over the years, the different community colleges had changed their AAOT degrees so that they were all just a little different. So if a student transferred from one community college to another, they would get potentially messed up. And so we decided as a group, we got to make that change, and we've got to come up with a degree that is all 17 of us will buy into and accept. Now that sounds fairly simple, but it really doesn't, does it? When you look at 17 vice presidents sitting down trying to come up with this, and the system person, Cam Prius, would be there, it was tough, but we came up with it. We fought through some really sticky issues. I mean, things like, do you have 6 hours of writing requirement, or do you do, 5 to 9, or, I mean, it just got, that's how ridiculous. I mean, we spent several all-day sessions just trying to work through all those issues. And I was part of that process, and very happy to say that we came up with, and then of course we still had to run whatever changes we had to go back to our campus and convince the campus, because then it was the instructional council or the academic council or whatever group of faculty that approved curriculum, they still had to approve it. And just because the CIA said this is the way we're going to do it, it wouldn't necessarily mean the faculty would do it. So we had to do a sales job on campus. So, but we did it. Everybody agreed, and of course it's better for students. So now they can transfer wherever they want. The degree is the same, and it transfers to all 7 universities seamlessly. So I'm used to working in the statewide groups like that. Certainly in Connecticut, we met regularly as a group of presidents, and we dealt directly with legislators, very close with legislators in our district because the budgets were so critical. So I'm used to working at that level, and that doesn't bother me. It's I can be very passionate about my college. It's usually harder within the college to try and get everybody to work together and be on the same page. But out there, it's no holds barred. It's like our college is going to, be represented. We may not get everything we want, but we will advocate for it. So, you're welcome.
Hi again. How's your day been?
Very good so far.
Good. As I'm sure you've been told several times throughout the day, our campus is going through a lot of changes. And one of the many processes that we are overhauling is student advising. And as Vice President of Academic Affairs here, could you please describe to us how you would work with student services to ensure that we have a functional advising model that promotes the success of students?
Absolutely. Well, certainly that is a critical area, and I think one of the areas, certainly where I was in Connecticut, that was one of the key areas of overlap between academic affairs and student services that that created, some friction, I guess I would say, because we had a situation where, plan sheets that list out the curriculum sometimes didn't match up with what was in the catalog, which was not matching up with what the advisors and student services were telling students. So it created some problems. And so trying to get, the faculty to work closely with the advisors in student services to make sure when they saw something that wasn't matching, they would communicate that to the faculty and get those things changed. But at Umpqua, we had a model where all the advising was done by advisors and student services. So the faculty didn't do advising per se, except, obviously, because I was a career technical faculty member for 20 years, and I certainly advised my majors. So even if I wasn't an official advisor at the college, I certainly made sure that my students knew what they needed to take, and I would give them, the plan sheet that they needed to take to the advisors. And then I know at other colleges, faculty certainly do that because they care about their programs and their students. But whether it's official or not, you've got to work together. So at Umpqua, we had a committee that was formed with the two vice presidents, and then we had faculty and deans on our side, and then they had, the key directors from student services on their side. And we met every 2 weeks, and we would bring to the table any issues that seemed to be relevant to both areas, and advising would be a big one. Catalog information, both how we formatted the catalog, how we timelines for getting information in. I mean, lots of little things that, faculty wouldn't think about necessarily, but it was important to student services and vice versa. And so we had to show that we were very interested in working together, because if those two areas don't work closely together, you're going to have some serious problems at all sorts of different levels. But that's one of the ways I'd make sure that, because I realize that advising is something that is, and I mean, if you're going to look at retention, how important is advising to retention? It's one of the key factors. And so we've got to make sure students are getting correct information and are being shepherded through the process as much as it'll allow us to.
One more question for you.
Sure.
Part of your responsibility of Vice President of Academic Affairs would be a budgetary responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And you will have several deans that will bring budget requests to you, and then you will need to make some decisions about those budget requests so that you have a budget to take to the president. And according to my knowledge, this can sometimes be a little bit wrought with internal politics and maybe some misunderstandings. So I would like to know what kind of experience you've had in budgeting and balancing the needs of different deans in budget requests, and how you go about making those decisions.
Okay. Well, again, at Umpqua, we had a couple of really tough years. I mean, we had cut 15% one year and 10% the next. And we really thought we were in a position where we were going to have to lay off some people. So instead of just keeping everything in my leadership team, which was the deans and the key directors, we had a department chair structure. So we went to the department chairs, which I met with every 2 weeks, and said, okay, I need you to help me. So we met several times, talked about priorities. How do we set priorities in academic affairs? How do we, what is the, things that we just absolutely feel we can't cut? What are some things we can reduce and eliminate? Whether it's programs, whatever. Now, certainly when you get down to that level, people don't want to start pointing fingers about who do we eliminate and what programs do we cut. But they certainly were very creative in coming up with ways to reduce cost and to make things more efficient. And so we came up with a list that then was brought to our leadership group. and we built a budget based on that. And I would say that, one of the criteria for the deans was that you need to look at the bigger picture. Yes, advocate for your area, but we're going to be questioning how that fits into the strategic plan goals. How does that fit into, if you have an academic plan, because that's the ultimate decision. And so we put the budget together then, and then it was brought to cabinet. Now, in a normal budget process, I like to do the accordion process where you'll have your budget managers, which are, it could be individual faculty members, it could be department heads, program coordinators, whatever level, the bottom level is of people that actually build and have a little budget. They would put their budgets together, they would meet with their deans. The deans would then bring the budget to the leadership team. We would review those, look at and of course, part of that beginning process is to have those criteria. What's the criteria that we have to build this budget on? Is there a certain amount we have to reduce? Are there certain priorities we want to focus on based on the strategic plan, et cetera? Do we know if tuition's going to go up? Those kind of things. And so those would be laid out as the deans brought their budgets in. So what would probably happen is that there'd be some adjustments. Some budgets would be reduced, some might go up, and then it would be the dean's responsibility to go back to their budget, all the people that they that reported to them, and share those changes and talk about them, and then if they had some good reasons why they shouldn't be reduced or changed in some way, then that would come back up to the leadership team. And we might go back and forth like that 2 or 3 times before we got a budget where the leadership team felt like this was a budget that everybody understands and we can live with that. And then it would go to the cabinet from there. So a couple of different ways.
I would like to expand on Brenda's question just a
Okay.
little and take it out to HR requests. So requests for new faculty, how do you deal with all of the requests that you get?
Well, at Umpqua, I tried to process. It wasn't perfect, and if I'd have stayed there longer, we'd probably modified it somewhat. But again, I met with the department chairs. The department chairs would go back to their faculty and kind of canvass what are the needs in our programs, in our areas. They would bring those forward to the department chairs. The department chairs would bring those, and we had a process by which there was a format that proposals had to be made, according to. So, justification, a rationale, a budget. Where's that money coming from? If you have any ideas, and maybe you could generate some of that revenue somehow. So that whole proposal was put together, and then we would collect all the proposals in the department chair meetings and share those. So the department chairs would each go around and have 4 or 5 minutes to make an appeal to everybody else. Here's why we need another math position, or here's why we need another, whatever. And then the department chairs went off, talked to their faculties, and then I actually had them vote on that. So they would come in and we'd put together a vote that said, oh, these 3 positions, everybody thought, you couldn't vote for your own, by the way. But, so you were looking at, who else made a good case. And again, does it fit into the strategic plan? Is it fit into our long-term goals for academics? Are we looking at any new programs? So there's a lot of other factors. And we'd come up with a list. And here's the list of positions that are being requested. And there might be, there was one year I think we had 12 or 13 on the list. And of course, then we had the top 3 or 4. Knowing in reality, we'd be lucky to get 3 or 4, but we had the list. And then I would take the list to the cabinet, we would discuss it, and I would advocate for the positions that were at the top of the list. I couldn't guarantee that those were the positions we would be funding, if any, because it had to go from the president's cabinet to the board, et cetera. But I, that was my advocacy, was to take that list as was developed by the department chairs with consultation with the faculty. And that's how we came up with our priority system. And Like I said, it is probably not perfect, and there's some ways we could probably do that a little differently, but I think the key is to get feedback from the constituents, being faculty. What are the needs? How does it fit into the strategic plan? And what makes the most sense for the college?
Don't want to go down a negative side, it's just reality, but the governor's budget went in and indicated a 6%. We had looked at 4 and considered 8 because that was a possibility, but he's presenting 6% reduction to the legislature. We're not sure what the legislature will in fact decide, but within that context, you talked about your passion and excitement for new programs and adding those. And I would assume there's not a passion for it, but when it comes to reallocation of monies, how do you or what have you been involved in regarding adjustment of programs, whether those are changed, modified, or no longer required? Process you might use for that.
Well, again, at Umpqua, we had, I'd actually read a book that was put out by a fellow that had developed a system for program viability nationwide, and it was mostly being used at universities, but it looked like something that could be applied at a college. So we looked at it, and it depended on a lot of metrics. You develop a list of metrics by which you would measure a program's success, and we tried to make it as quantitative as possible. Obviously enrollments, trends, and retention and completions, and how many people are going to work if it's a career technical program, and those kind of metrics. So we developed a list of metrics, and then you score those. So you actually put the data together, you look at how the trends are over the last 3 years, I think is what we were using, and it comes up with a score, 1 to 100. So every program in the college had a score of 1 to 100. Now, you don't want to publish that because it's like putting a faculty's student evaluations on the wall for everybody to see. But what it does is it gives a committee the process to look at the strength of programs. And we didn't look at that as a way to define which programs should be cut, but which programs possibly needed help. So this is not something that you could do, let's say you had a 10% cut, and all of a sudden you got to go in 2 months' time and make a decision whether to cut programs. This process doesn't work. This has got to be ongoing over a long period of time, whereby you have time for these programs to improve if they're down at the bottom of the list. So this committee, which is made up of faculty and some deans and the vice president, get together, they see the list, programs that are in the bottom tier, the faculty are brought in, they discuss improvement plans, how can we work with you to make the program better, if maybe it's marketing, maybe it's recruitment, maybe it's, it could be a lot of things. Then the program is given 2 years to try and turn things around. And if they're not turned around in 2 years, then the program could be cut. Again, there could be lots of different variables. The idea is to make it as quantitative and take the emotions out of cutting a program. That year that we had large cut in Oregon, we did cut a program. And I think pretty much everybody in the faculty agreed that program probably should go, obviously except for the faculty in the program. Now there were no full-time faculty in that program, which made it a little easier, but of course there were students. And so they all came to the board meeting and they were very upset, and it wasn't a pleasant situation. I think if we had had time to have this process in place over a few years and you had time to improve it, and then you could just show that it just wasn't improving and it wasn't going to improve for a myriad of reasons, then there is a lot more likelihood that those decisions are less painful and can be planned over a period of time. But so I've seen it where we had to cut a program very quickly. It was painful, and one could say, well, yes, they had low student numbers and low graduation rates, and the students weren't getting jobs, but it'll get better. Well, maybe it would, but we didn't have time to get the data and to do the trend analysis, and So I think having a process in place that is more quantitative and less emotional is certainly a way to do that. Now, then that gets back to budgets. I mean, certainly if you plan for that, new programs do cost money. So that's where you have to look at the total cost of the program, because maybe there's some things you can do for faculty, maybe there's a grant you can get, you can partner with a university. I mean, there's lots of things you can do that'll reduce the cost to the college for a new program. You can work with industry. You know, we had a composites program we developed in Oregon. It's a plastics composites. They built airplanes, and the manufacturers wanted a new program. So we researched it, felt like it was a good thing to implement, but we didn't have any space. This required, you know, large amount of square footage, a lot of nasty chemicals, because it was like fiberglass, but it was a plastic composite. You had to put together and heat compress, and so very expensive equipment. Went to industry and said, hey, you know, if you'll work with us so we can use your manufacturing center as our laboratory, we can make this program work. And we had 2 or 3 that came forward, worked it out so that our students could go in, and of course most of the adjuncts in the program were people working in these industries, but it was a great partnership. And we were able to do the program, very cost effective. The students got jobs. Of course, most of them went to work for that same company where the labs were. So there was incentive there to work with us because they got to see the best of the best students coming through. So there's a lot of ways you can partner and work with other entities to reduce the cost of new programs. And I think those are the kind of creative things that you want to try and get faculty to think about and look at as you're wanting to develop new programs. So all those things impact the budget.
A quick accreditation question. We have lots of programs that require a separate or special program accreditation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see yourself in that process, and what is some of your background on that?
Oh gosh, we just got done with one in Connecticut for our early childhood ed program. Last year we had one for the business program. I mean, so a lot of those. And those, at least the one we went through with the early childhood ed, I think it was a little more rigorous than what we did for our 10-year college accreditation. It was amazing. So I think you have to work closely with the faculty. You got to give them some resources. The faculty in that program, there was really just one and one adjunct that did the entire self-study. But we gave them a lot of hours of, what we call student worker money to help put that all together. So I think as a vice president, you got to give the people the resources and the help to put those things together, because they're just as important as the college accreditation, because it means the difference between that program being successful or not. And some of them are quite rigorous. And I imagine the one you go through is pretty rigorous. Yeah. So I think those are all very important, and so it's just like taking a program review, but it's on steroids, right? I mean, it's just a lot more information needed, and of course the one in education, early childhood, was focused on outcomes assessment. I mean, so they became the models, and the beauty of that accreditation project was that they developed a system that was just amazing. And now other faculty are going to jump on that and adopt that model, because it is so well developed. I mean, they have all the rubrics and everything is just laid out beautifully for that program, and how they're assessing whether the students have learned those outcomes, and then how they made changes to the curriculum based on that assessment, and they've gone through the whole process. So they made it as a model project, and it really worked out well. So you've got to support faculty in doing those things.
You touched on a cornerstone for this in terms of institutional research. Where should that report be, or let me put it more broadly, how do you see IR's role in staffing relative to not just academics, the academic affairs, but broadly for the college?
Oh gosh, yes. IR is a college is a college position. As we get into more of the data-driven decision-making, the IR becomes even more important. At Quinnebog, the IR answered to me because I felt like it was that important. It shouldn't be focused just on academics or student services or any other area. And my IR would be getting requests from all over campus all the time. So my job was to help her sort through those and prioritize those a little bit, along with some of the deans. We would meet and talk about those because it got to the point where sometimes it was more than what she could do. When you look at all the iPads and all the reporting that position has to do by law, it takes up an enormous amount of time. So and this is one person on the whole campus. Now, the college is about half the size of yours. So, but even at that, to put that on one person is a lot of work. But it's a matter of prioritizing what's needed at the moment. But it has to be a college-wide focus because there's data needs in all areas of the campus that have to be addressed. And so that person did all the data, pretty much. I mean, all the outcome stuff the faculty did. But as far as getting any of the data from iPads on enrollments and graduations and all that, that was all the IR that did that for the accreditation report.
Tricky question for you. There's a little bit of difference in culture between Connecticut and Oregon. What do you think of it here? Do you see any things that give you some trepidation about coming to Cheyenne, Wyoming, that Interstate 80 stop?
Well, I guess to be honest with you, I don't know. I haven't been with you all enough to know what the culture is like here. I'm beginning to get a flavor of some of the things you've gone through and how you're addressing them and how you're moving forward. That's one of the problems with this kind of a process. And I've always said, the hiring process for these kind of positions is fatally flawed. But I don't know a better way to do it, or I maybe would have brought that forward to somebody. But the problem is that by the time you take a position, you're going to have to be in it for a while before you really know. Are you really fitting in? Is it a good fit for you? Is it a good fit for the college? So it's hard to say. But I will say there is a definite similarity in cultures from what I've seen in Western colleges versus Eastern. I'm not going to have any value judgments on that, but there's just different. And it is, it's just something that it takes a while to figure out.
We're going to make Stan walk back and forth as many times as we can today. You have a CTE background, correct?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay. One of the changes that we're going through is a reorganization, and there is a proposal to move workforce and development under the Vice President of Academic Affairs. And you've spoken a little bit about how you would support faculty, but can you speak to, as Vice President of Academic Affairs, how would you ensure that all of the workforce programs were fully supported and successful?
Well, I guess my understanding is that all of those programs are going to shift over under academic affairs, right? So they'll be part of that umbrella. So there won't be any difference. If I was the vice president, it would be any different with those than any other programs as far as importance. I've never been anywhere where all the credit programs weren't under academic affairs. So I've never been under another model. Yes, I have a prejudice. I believe all credit programs should be under the Vice President of Academic Affairs. I just feel that strongly. I think it's hard otherwise to be consistent and all that. Now, it's maybe worked well with all of you, probably thanks to Stan, but that's just the way I'm coming from. So I think all credit programs should be under one house. Now, in Umpqua, I also had all the workforce development. So I had all the non-credit stuff. And so And certainly in Quinnebog, obviously, I had all the workforce development. That was a totally separate division, though. That was, had a separate director, not a dean, but a director, versus the credit side. So, and it works in that particular situation. It worked fine, okay? But it's interesting to see from one part of the country to the other the difference in what a college will call a credit program and a non-credit program. Programs that we had at Umpqua that were credit programs were non-credit in Connecticut and vice versa. So I gave up trying to figure out just what is the model here. I guess what it means is that if it makes sense for it to be non-credit where you're at, then that works. But I think having them all under, both credit and non-credit, under academic affairs makes a lot of sense. And I think that's one thing that sort of encouraged me to apply here, was that I saw that was going to happen, and I think that's a positive thing in my mind. So.
Hi, I'm Rakshi. I work with Gear Up, which is state or federally funded grant.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, you spoke a little bit about different roles. What do you believe is the role for a community college within the secondary school system, junior high and high school?
Oh gosh, I think there's got to be a lot of connections. In Oregon, in Bend, we had not started working with concurrent enrollments in the high school. So we had all these. Now, a high school student could come to the college after school, after they got out of their public school, and take college classes. That was fine. But we had no classes offered in the high schools. I thought that was crazy, and there was a lot of interest. So we set up, and I helped design the College Now program, we called it. So where we found faculty at the high school that wanted to teach some college outcomes in their class. So if it was math, then it had to match, obviously, but they had to agree to match our outcomes and our course outlines. And then there had to be a faculty member, obviously, that was overseeing those people at the high school. And whether you met with that faculty at the high school regularly or you gave them the final exam, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can have that kind of quality control. But that program has just exploded, and I see that you all here have a very large number of concurrent students at the high school. So I think it's wonderful, because there again, you are giving students a head start. They're able to transition to the college, and they're encouraged to come to the college because they've already got college credits. They're already on their way. In Connecticut, I have a high school within the college. So it's called a middle college, and that's a model that's used in Connecticut. There's 3 right now in the state out of 12 colleges, and ours is unique because they're all mixed up. So we've got 105 high school students in the college, and they're there from 7:30 till 2, I think. And they, so they could be in this classroom, and right next door could be an A&P class or English writing. So they're, and they don't wear badges or anything, so you don't know if it's a high school student or a college student. It's a wonderful model. Some of the staff, don't like it because there are more discipline issues with high school students, as you can imagine, than there are college students. But by and large, it's worked pretty well. And the model that we had was to encourage them to take college classes. So right now, they're up to about 35% of their students are taking 1 or more college classes per term, as well as taking their high school classes. Well, they don't have to go anywhere. They're right there. Some of them are taking, some of the better students are taking 3 college classes. At the same time, they're taking their high school classes. Well, some of them are going to come out of high school with maybe a year's worth of work done at the college level. I think that's a win-win. I think that's just fabulous. So the more we can work with the high schools, the more creative ways we can find to bring high school students to the college, get them engaged. We at Shasta, I thought it was a neat model. We started an 8th grader day. And the idea is we got to get these kids in the 8th grade, because by the time they're sophomores, it's too late in some cases. So we brought every single 8th grader in our district to the college on the same day. I mean, it was like 2,000 or 3,000. And we did a big show for them. So all the CTE programs set up little demonstrations, and we toured them around in groups of 20 or 30. And in chemistry area, they did, of course, wow, boom experiments that blew things up, and to get them excited about it. And I couldn't believe how many of those 8th graders said, I've never been to the campus before. I guess that probably shouldn't have surprised me, but there were just a ton of them. Well, over the 5 years, because it, obviously it took 5 years from to get to 8th grade to graduation, the first year after the first group of 8th graders that graduated high school, we saw a big spike in the number of high school graduates coming to the college. Now, could I prove that it was because they came to the college in the 8th grade? No, but I'll bet there was some correlation there. So I think the younger you work with them, we'd also gotten a grant where we developed a program where we'd start working with them in the 8th grade. By the 9th grade, they would have to try and at least come up with some kind of idea of what they think they might want to study in college. And we'd develop a curriculum, and they would take some courses that would be in line with that, whether it's making sure they take chemistry and physics and whatever at high school level, or higher level math, or whatever. But they had to work on it. And so we followed them from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior years to make sure that they were on track. Now, of course, a lot of them changed their mind 6,000 or 8,000 times. But some of them, they knew what they wanted, they stayed with it, and by the time they got out of high school, again, they had taken a lot of college classes, either at the high school or at the college, and they were way ahead of the game. So I really enjoy working on the seamless transition thing. Any ways that we can to make it easier for students to go from high school to college to university. Because right now, the number of students coming to college from the high schools nationwide is not anywhere near what it should be. And those are students that when they're 25, 26, and they're making minimum wage at McDonald's, all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and they say, oh, gosh, maybe I should go back to college. And a lot of them do, and that's fantastic. And whether you're 25 or 85, it doesn't matter. But obviously, if we could have got them when they were 18 or before, then maybe their lives would have been enhanced. If we showed them the importance of education and how easy it was to get into college and do well at the community college if they put out the effort. So any way I can work to try and work on that process, I really enjoy that.
Hi, I'm Rhonda with Workforce and Community Development, and to continue that conversation, I am familiar with Middle College and some other things you spoke of, but what about the non-traditional students? How do you accommodate them and their special needs?
Well, I think from what I've seen at most of the colleges I've been at, the non-traditional students do best by being mixed in with the other students. So, a lot of them come in and it's not skill level that's their problem, it's fear. Fear that they can't learn, fear that they won't be successful. And so, giving them that help, whether it be close advising from a faculty member, or this advising center, whether it's some kind of mentoring program. There's some grants I know that have come out to work with Perkins grants to work with non-traditional students in different categories. And so there's some resources where you can hire tutors, or you can hire people that can spend more time with those students to help them through that period where they're a little unsure of themselves. But I found a lot of it is when they get into classes where there's 18 and 19-year-olds in there, they tend to blossom because all of a sudden 18, 19-year-olds are going to them saying, how do you do this? And they sit there and help them, and that builds their confidence, and it's just an amazing process. And that's why we love community colleges, right? You don't see that in the university very often. So being able to take those students and mix them up and have a wide range of ages and backgrounds in a single class as an instructor, I love that. It was fabulous, and I would try to really not pick on, but encourage the non-traditional students to share their experiences, their life experiences that could relate to the younger students, and I saw some amazing things. So.
Hi, Chad Marley with Information Technology. And I appreciate your realizing that you are more comfortable at the vice president level. Do you see any concerns that you may have because you will be transferring from a president level in charge of the whole institution back down to the vice president level?
Nope. No, I really don't. I don't have much of an ego, so I will say one of the things that I've realized about being a president is most of them have pretty good egos, and that's not a bad thing. I think you need that to some extent, but it's, you know, I actually think that was one of the things that was not a strength of mine, is that I want to pull in other people and let other people do things, and so no, that will not bother me one bit. I would love to be able to just make a contribution to the college at that level and focus on things I enjoy doing.
I was, for some reason, when I looked backwards, I forgot my real question. So and it was a really good one. So I'll talk to you a little bit about, or would like you to talk to us a little bit about just student services and how much you've worked with student service units and some models that you know of that work to collaborate for the success of students early on in their college journey as we put them on solid legs. I just have you talk about that.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that I've always struggled with is, as an example, freshman seminar. Okay, or some type of a course to, whether it's college ready, I mean, anything that would give students some skills to be successful at college. I've been at a college, private college in New York, where it was mandatory. Every single student had to take it. I don't care if they had been a Vietnam War veteran, they had to take that course. Now, I think that was too much. Every single faculty member in the college had to teach a section of that course. So, I mean, that's one extreme. And I didn't think that was the best model. But I think everything I've studied, I've gone to conferences, looked at Noel Levitt's stuff, you know. I do feel like there's a lot of data showing that you know, making a certain population of those students, and I frankly would probably put all the dev ed students in that boat. And we'd started something like that at Umpqua where we were trying to set up cohorts. So we tried to register dev ed students so that they would all be taking the same set of courses in groups. So they'd all be in the same dev math course, dev English, and then we had them take a freshman seminar type course. And to get them familiar with each other, let them work together, help each other. And we did that in concert with student services, so because that was a big part of their job, helping students place into certain things. So I think there's different models, but I would love to work with student services to see how can we best develop a model that, again, works to retention. We need to grab them early and find ways to engage them and help them succeed, because if they have a couple of successes early on, they're going to have a more likelihood to stay with it. When we see 5 to 10% success rates for dev ed students, there's something we're not doing right, and it's not working. And I've talked to other groups today about that, and there's some other models, and I know you all are trying some things that sound promising, and we just got to keep working on that, because we cannot consider ourselves fully successful as a community college if we're not helping those students to succeed. They're not all going to succeed, and maybe some of them, really don't have business being at a community college, but I'm not going to make that decision. If they want to come and they think they can make it, I want to do everything I can to help them. And if they choose not to do the things they need to do to succeed, then that's one thing. But I don't want to be the one. In Connecticut, we've gotten rid of dev ed. So after next year, there will be no dev ed in Connecticut. Not only is that going to be a revenue buster for the community colleges, when 3/4 of our students take at least one dev ed course, but I don't know what those students are going to do. Where are they going to go? So I don't think that's the answer, but I also don't think that we're doing enough And so let's find a way to make those things work. And we got to work with student services to do that.
We are out of time in order to
Darn.
get you to the next appointment. Thank you
I was
very
just
much.
getting ready.
He's just getting wound up. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you all for
everyone's
coming. I really appreciate it.